Hello and welcome to Cloudforest Vibes. My name's Bobby, and this is how I grow orchids and carnivorous plants. Hello and welcome to Cloudforest Vibes. So today we're going to have a look around at the tent and the tank. There is just so much progress. There's flowers, there is spikes, there's buds, there's just everything. So we're going to have a look around at everything. I was watering today and noticed some really cool new stuff and some really exciting news in the tent. And there's some really cool stuff going on in the tank as well, I'll end with. So spring has definitely sprung. The temperatures are getting up there. I've got the door open in here. It's 77 degrees inside the tent right now. The room itself, I got the window open to that as well. It's 81 degrees in this grow room area. So really getting warm. The plants are loving it, most of them at least. Some of the ones that don't, I've already moved back over to the tank, and actually they're really happy. They're doing really well, so I'll show you those as well. Anyhow, before I ramble on too much out here, let's go ahead and get inside and we will start looking at some of the progress and some of the awesome blooms. So we're going to start over here on what I used to call my Phalaenopsis wall, but it's grown significantly in species since then, or genus since then. But there's lots and lots of progress. Starting over here with the Phalaenopsis, we have still this beautiful newest leaf, huge, progressing on. And it started its first new growth of the season right there. We've got lots and lots of root activity, roots that have popped out over the winter that are doing really well. And overall, I'd say this is a really healthy plant. It's maturing quite nicely, and I really look forward to hopefully seeing blooms on this thing in the next year, or maybe two if I'm lucky. The Balena down here has held onto its spike. I didn't cut it, of course. And if you look back here, there's a speck of green above my finger, and it's starting a second spike. Now, last year it had a spike on it that it had done the same thing. It had grown and grown, and it never actually bloomed. This actually bloomed, so I'm interested to see whether or not it's going to bloom on both spikes this year, or whether or not it's going to push this one out and this one's just going to kind of abort. So only time will tell. We will see with that one. The other Balena that I have, the division that came out of the original pot with that one, it's doing well. It's pushing on a new growth, and it's matured this really beautiful leaf over the winter time. Really nice. I have one of my newest phals down here. Ooh, this is Phalaenopsis manii, and it too is progressing a really nice little new leaf down there. I keep this one a little bit more shaded. Probably going to end up pulling it up when I get a chance, but right now it lives down here, kind of in the shadow of its cousin up here, the Balena. Now, last but certainly not least is the Phalaenopsis Parishi. This is just starting to fade. Its first bloom that opened up here for us, just starting to fade. But we still do have the three here. And again, this is a beautiful little miniature Phalaenopsis. Awesome, relatively easy to grow species. And I'm interested to see what it does this year. It's put on some decent root growth. It does have one root that's dying here. I need to get off of here, but I'm interested to see if it keeps on growing in a nice big growth pattern, or after these blooms, if it comes out with a weird stunted growth again like it did last year. So we're just gonna have to see, I guess. I'm feeding them pretty heavy right now, and they are all reacting really well to that, it seems, at least so far. Now, over here to the right of the Phalaenopsis Parishi, I looked at this plant in a short video not very long ago. This is Lepanthes ariculata. It's almost always in bloom. Right now, of course, it's not. Let's see. Yeah, no, it's going to be hard to get along with. But the important thing is, I showed this in my short because look at all this new growth. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I mean, 11 or 12, almost a dozen new growths coming on this thing. and I am extremely excited. That means this plant is theoretically about to double in size. So I'm happy about that. I cannot wait to see this thing just packed full of big, healthy growths like these that are blooming sized and producing all those awesome little yellow flowers. Now, something that's going to be kind of difficult to see, but it is worth looking at, is going to be this. Let's try to focus on that. This is the Miltonia Phalaenopsis spike, and I don't know if you can tell just how freaking crazy big this thing has gotten. It's starting to branch. I've literally had to lay it up here on my Cattleyas to try to balance it. It's got another fork coming over this way that's starting to grow into the encyclias and maxillaria over here. It's got another fork that I had to, again, zip tie together to kind of manage because it was just spreading out and going absolutely ape. So we've got lots and lots of branches. Everywhere it's starting to branch on branch. So I think we don't have too much longer, and I'm really excited because this is my first Oncidium species type to bloom for me. It's big news. The plant is all the way down here, and it's doing pretty well. I haven't noticed any signs of new growth yet. I really need to get this sucker some more light because this leaf is getting a little dark, and the reason it's not getting enough light is this giant brassia that hovers over it and is smothering just about everything on that bottom shelf. So I've done some rearranging. I'm really trying to figure out what to do with this plant. I really want to see it bloom, of course, but the last 3 growths became kind of unmanageable, and now it's pushing out 1, 2, 3 more, and they're already getting quite large. So I really don't know what to do with that plant. Really needs a good home. I don't think I'm going to be able to sustain it long term, but it is quite healthy. If you guys like root porn, it's pretty hard to beat this plant. This thing has just gone crazy again. Everywhere on it's growing. Roots into other mounts and everything else around it. It just invades everything. So that's Brassia jippyjapensis. It started off as this little small division down here, and as you see, it has just become an absolute monster. Todd, do you want this plant? I think this thing would look just awesome in your polytunnel and probably grow a lot better for you than it does for me. You'd probably get it to bloom. I cannot get this damn thing to bloom. So anyhow, that's the Brassia that is just absolutely smothering my entire tent. Doing really well, but again, I cannot manage to get this thing to bloom, so we really need to find this thing an awesome home. Alrighty. So, extremely exciting progress here as well. This is my Sophronienes, or Cattleya Manticorea, and this thing has not only 1, not 2, but 3 new growths coming on it, which means 3 chances for a nice, awesome red bloom on this plant. If I get 3 flowers on this thing, I'm going to be so stoked. This is one of my favorite blooms I've had. Absolutely gorgeous, and the plant is doing well. Really likes its mount. I've got it in here, tucked in with some of my other hybrid Cattleya types and Sophronienes pygmaea and Tolumnias, things like that, in the highlight section. But we're going to keep an eye on that, a really close eye on that, because I cannot wait to see what it does. I just hope we get 3 blooms on it. That would be so awesome. I have my Cyclamentia Tampence here, somewhat getting overrun by the Brassia, but still managing to hang on. It's got 2 spikes on it, but it looks like it's only going to have 3 flowers this round. I'm not exactly sure what happened to this. I think maybe snails got it, but the tip of both of these spikes was killed off somehow. Again, I really think it was snails. I'm having a little bit of an issue right now in here with really teeny weeny little snails, so I guess they're breeding, which is really a bad thing, and I have got to nip it in the butt quick because I have a couple spider mites in here. I've seen a couple snails, and that's too much. I need to figure this out. I'll be doing a video on that here soon in the next few weeks once I figure out how I'm going to wage war on all these bugs. So coming up here, we'll look at a couple blooms. This is the beautiful Dendrobium Unicum. And as you'll see, these blooms are really starting to fade fast. The first few that opened already have fallen off, but we can still enjoy these perhaps one or two more times before everything just drops off of this thing. Beautiful plant. I'm so thrilled with the performance of this orchid this year. I'm still stunned every time I look at these blooms in any kind of depth. They really, really are beautiful. The Ulbafilma Arbegirum over here, wiggling away, has already dropped off its first two blooms. They do not last very long, but luckily they are successive. So it opens from the back and it dies from the back. And these ones up here at the very front still have yet to open. So this thing's going to be in bloom for us for quite a while. It does not stink as bad as I was expecting, and I'm very happy about that. It kind of has a musty, weird smell. It's not a great smell, but at least for me it doesn't smell like absolute death. So that is a big plus for this one. Beautiful, active, cool little plant, draws a lot of attention, and it doesn't stink to high heaven. It didn't make this whole room, you know, vomit status, which is awesome. So that's Ulbafilma Arbegirum, and we will definitely be looking at this again here very soon. Our Dracula Gaskiliana has actually just today started opening up its next bud on this spike. It is a successively flowered spike, so this is the second flower it's going to be opening on it, and we will have to come back and take a look at this thing soon, because I think this right now is my favorite Dracula that I have in my collection. It's awesome, just such a really cool bloom. But the plant's doing great as well, lots and lots of new growth coming up, and we have another spike forming under one of these growths here, so hopefully in the not too distant future we'll have two active spikes if it doesn't get too warm and knock them out. Panning over here to the left, the Dracula Carterii is still in bloom, and it's awesome looking. It's got this happy little face. Oh, let me get out farther. Lots and lots more buds to come, still forming. I've had a few blasts. I think what's happening, let me get out of here, we can talk about it, is I keep my door of my tent here cracked at night, and I do have this fan, so what I'm trying to do is angle this fan more up. I've been doing pretty well. Once I got the breeze off of this side of the plant, these buds have started to actually form a little bit more and better. They get farther at least, so I think that's what it is. I think it's catching some sort of a draft it doesn't like. I've moved it further over here. It's a little bit more shaded by the maxillarias and stuff over here as well, and it really is starting to do better. The buds on this side of the plant seem to hang on really well, so I really think that's it. I think it's catching a draft and becoming unhappy. The Dracula Chestertonii right next to it I have slid over as well. It's got this really awesome new growth that's formed, and a couple more new growths that have started popping up so far this spring all over the place. So really excited to see the future of this one, see how far it goes and grows this year. I'd love to see a bunch of new roots take off on this plant, and even more so I would love to see this thing bloom, but I am not gonna hold my breath. I know Lynn Smith, she's a much better Dracula grower than I, and it's taken her quite a while to flower hers, so I'm just gonna be excited and thankful that we've got really nice new growths coming on. So that's all the progress in my Draculas. Right above, I have some extremely big news. So this plant right here is my Mormolica rufescens. This is one that I updated the moss on very recently. It's got an awesome new growth coming here, and more importantly, I went to water this thing the other day and I started to freak out. I thought there was a beetle or some sort of a crazy insect in here, but you know what that is? That is actually a bud. So it looks like this thing, after 2.5 years of growing, it's grown on quite nicely. It's gotten much larger. I mean, it's a healthy, happy plant now. It is finally happy enough to bloom. I did make another change when I updated the moss on this mount. I actually used to keep this on the back wall. I brought it forward, so now it's getting a little bit more light, and I think that's what caused this. I think that the updated media, trying to get the pH balance right, keeping the roots happy, and giving it some more light, has finally caused this plant to produce a spike, or a bud at least. So we're going to be looking out for this thing in the very near future, And other big news in the maxillaria world, I looked down here today and I realized that my Maxillaria tenuifolia is also just starting to open up its first of a couple buds. It's got another one behind it, and I think another one or two forming down on various growths, just getting started. But they form pretty fast, but it looks like we're having success again this year with Maxillaria tenuifolia after a long battle of not blooming this plant. So really excited, really happy to see this plant happy, and I will be sharing more of these blooms in a later video once they are all open. Something else I'm extremely eager to share with you guys is this little Tolumnia calichyla is finally starting to open up its little bud. Next time we come back in here in the next few days, I will make sure I get this thing on video. But it's a stunning little yellow flower. I think you can probably see already with the backdrop. Green and yellow. Brilliantly bright flower, and it does have a fragrance, so I'll be looking forward to sharing that with you guys as well here soon. That just about wraps up all the bud and bloom sort of progress here in the tent, so let's go ahead and get over into the tank and take a look at stuff over there. I've got some really neat news. So we are here at the tank, and all I can really say is there is just tons and tons of progress. Just about everything is in bloom, all the Lepanthes, everything except for one. We'll talk about that here in a moment. And lots of really exciting news as far as blooms to come. So, starting up here, we've got our Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii red. It's finally fully opened its third bloom up here, and it is just looking outstanding. And I'm pleased to say I noticed the other day it has a fourth bloom coming right here. So soon, hopefully, we'll have 4 on this thing, but I'm not sure if both of these will be able to hang in there that long. They have been on quite a while already. Quite a long-lived bloom on Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii, so you get a lot of bang for your buck. Really awesome little plant. No signs of new growth yet, but for now, I am just thrilled with all these blooms. Zooming back past Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii, we have another lovely little red bloom. This is Lepanthes Calladonna, and if you look speckled through here, there is just red everywhere. Lots and lots of blooms. Again, this is one of the most floriferous species of Lepanthes that I grow, and it's got these little new growths popping up all over the place. It is growing like mad, so that is great. Some of my better success stories with a rescue orchid, I did have to rescue this plant, so this used to be down to 1 leaf, believe it or not. Down here, my Lepanthes telepodoniflora, we do have a bloom open. It just spent several of its blooms. It's been blooming its little head off here lately, but more importantly, I see the beginnings of new growths starting to come out. It is the season. I do need to upgrade the moss on all of the mounts of my Lepanthes. I did have a little bit of a tragedy the other day. I had to do an emergency remount on my Lepanthes helicocephala. This thing has lost all of its roots except for the ones you see on the bare bark. This little division kind of fell off. I strapped it up here with the bare roots, seeing how it's going to do, and changed out the moss down here, but I had to cut all the blooms off. It was starting to lose its foliage, dump leaves, and I knew right away, once I smelled them out, that I had let it just go for way too long. All of my Lepanthes are pretty much in the same boat right now, except for some of the newer ones. They all need a freshening up of the moss, and this is a great example of when it starts to get tired looking. You see, it's just not quite so good looking anymore. This plant was growing like mad. It has slowed down. It's still blooming. That's the thing. Lepanthes are super strong plants. They will bloom their little heads off even through some really severe distress. So you got to be careful. But once the moss starts to go, you really do want to make sure you guys are taking care of these plants. Update them regularly. I try to do it yearly for myself. But keep a really close eye on whatever media that you grow all your Lepanthes in, because, like I said, they will bloom their little heads off. They are strong little orchids, and really beautiful little orchids. But if you're not careful, they will literally grow themselves to death, just like this guy. So I wasn't careful. I let my moss go, and it just kept blooming and blooming and blooming and blooming and blooming. I had 4 spikes, 4 blooms at a time on some of these, and I cut all of them off, praying, hoping that I get some strength back into this plant. But that is a bit of a tragedy. My newest Lepanthes down here, this is Lepanthes Orchid. Really neat. It's got blooms on, well, 1, 2, 3 of its growths. It had a 4th one here. Must have finished up. And just above it, this thing has not stopped. It's got 4 or 5 flowers on at all times. That's Guatemalensis. And something very special right here. This weird little thing. This is Ulbafilma Tentaculiferum. I have struggled to bloom this, and I am pleased to say I do have 2 blooms open. They were wide open this morning. It's a funny little species. A lot of Ulbafilm's blooms open up in the daytime and they will close at night. And this is one of them. If we follow this up, I've had several spikes blast, which you'll see, but I have several more buds that are starting to turn and look like they really very well might bloom. So, great success. This is the second or third flush of blooms on this little plant, and I couldn't be more thrilled. More news to come. My Masdevallia exquisita just keeps going. This is its newest bloom. It just opened up. Right next to it we have another bud. In here we have another bud, and I thought I saw the beginning of another spike further back here in the plant a little bit earlier, but I may be wrong. But for now we're going to have 3 more awesome Masdevallia exquisita blooms. This is one of my favorite plants right now. It has been in bloom for months, and it is just so beautiful. Does not get old. And finally, panning to the right just a little bit, I have really big news involving my Ulbafilma speciosum. If I get in here, zoom, you're going to see behind my finger we have 1, 2, and 3 more spikes coming on this plant. So it looks like we're going to see 3 more of these big awesome blooms this year. I'll throw a picture up if you guys are unfamiliar with Ulbafilma speciosum. It is absolutely my favorite Ulbafilma, at least that I have, that I've gotten to bloom. So I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. Lots and lots of progress and cool things to come. I hope you enjoyed, and I cannot wait to share my next video with you guys, because we should be back in the tent looking at a lot more new blooms. So thank you so much as always. Please stay safe, and until next time, happy growing.